שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, מסרו מיום ליום ישועתו. שירו לאדוני, שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני, כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני, ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו. ספרו בגויים כבודו, לכל העמים נפלאותיו, כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, נורא הוא על כל אלוהים. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש,
Esainai el ha'arim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Esainai el ha'arim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai, Ose shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai, Ose shamayim va'aretz. Esainai el ha'arim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Esainai el ha'arim, me'ayin yavo ezri.
Shabbat Shalom. So as we set our intention for this morning on page 67, I also want to remind you that if you didn't get a text sheet when you came in, they're on the little table in the front by the door. That's going to be for our text study later in the day. It makes it a little bit easier to have you have that now. So whenever you want to grab that, you can. Page 67 at the bottom, let's read responsively. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet.
May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May the synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
We turn now to page 77 as we join together at the top, thanking God for our bodies and the way that they work every day, and remembering that we are still in this moment of COVID and we require masks here at Temple Beth-El over your nose and your mouth at all times. If you don't have a mask, you can grab one at the front. Together, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom, you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware. We would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh kol basar umafli la'asot. On page 78, Elohai neshama shenatata bi, my God, the soul you have given me is pure.
Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Ata berata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Ve'ata mishamra bekirbi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi.
We continue responsively on page 83. As we recognize the nisim b'chol yom, the blessings, the miracles that we encounter every day. As I awaken, let this be my thought. May my day be filled with acts of loving kindness. Let me be drawn to learning and discernment, and may my actions be shaped by mitzvot. Keep me from iniquity, disgrace, and sin. May I not be overwhelmed by temptation or despair. Distance me from evil people and false friends. Let me cultivate a life of goodness. May my hands reach out in kindness, and I will serve God through acts of righteousness. Today and every day, may I merit your mercy by living my life with compassion and love. Holy One of blessing, draw me to your words. Teach me the art of sacred living. Baruch atah Adonai, hamilamed chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. We turn now to page 106 for Chatzi Kaddish as we rise and remain standing through Shema.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, Amen. B'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, Mechayechon uvyomechon, Uchayedecho Beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uvizman kariv, v'yemeru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach, le'alam ul'almei omaya, yitbarach, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh, v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran v'alma, v'yemeru, Amen. Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
Together on page 110. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, osei shalom uvorei et hakol, ha'meir la'aretz v'ladarim alecha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or sha'asita yifa'arucha sela. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizkeh hulanu mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. Together on 113. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said. And light-blinded we saw that inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue with the Ve'ahavta on page 116. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, emet. On page 123. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We will look back at the pages of written history and be amazed, and then we will laugh and sing. And the good that is in us, children in their cradles, will have won. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all of the sufferings will gather there and become song, ringing out into every corner of the earth from end to end, and the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert, will all to that morning throng. Page 122.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh, shira chadasha shibchu geulim leshimcha al sfat hayam, yachad kulam hodu ve'himlichu ve'ameru Adonai Emloch le'olam va'ed. Tzur Yisrael, kuma bi'ezrat Yisrael, ufedechenu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedos Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
We rise for the Amidah on page 124.
Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chastei Havot V'Imahot, Umevi Gula Lifnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memhit, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, B'neman hatal hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כי שם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. We continue on page 132 with Yismechu as we rejoice in this Shabbat that we have been given.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם ישמעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. וישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת. ובשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. חמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. וישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. וישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, וקוראי עונג שבת.
On page 135. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished? Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. We are going to turn to page 138. If you look in the middle of the page of this Hoda'ah section, this opportunity we have to thank God, which we sometimes forget to do, it says on Hanukkah, continue on page 264. So keep a finger on 138 because we're going to read together, but then after that first paragraph, we're going to jump to 264 and 265. So kind of keep your fingers in multiple places there. We'll give you a second, and then we will join together on 138. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one, whose mercies never end, O compassionate one, whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. Don't lose 138. We're going to come back to 140 in a second. And we join together on 264. We thank you for the miracles, for the redemption, for the mighty deeds and saving acts brought about by you, and for the wars which you waged for our ancestors in the days of old at this season. In the days of the Hasmoneans, Mattathias ben Yochanan, the high priest, and his children, when the evil government of Greece rose up against your people Israel to make them forget your Torah and to make them leave the laws of your will, in your great mercy you rose up with them in their time of trouble and fought in their fight, judged their cause just. You delivered the mighty into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the unclean into the hands of the pure, the evil into the hands of the righteous, and the arrogant into the hands of those who engage in your Torah. For you made a great and holy name in your world. And for your people Israel, you brought about the great triumph and redemption on that very day. And when your children came to the Holy of Holies and emptied your temple and purified your holy place and lit candles in your holy courts and established these 8 days of Hanukkah, grateful to acknowledge and to praise your great name. We continue with Sim Shalom on page 140.
Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha.
We take a moment now for our own silent prayers.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu el kol Yisrael, v'yimiru. Amen. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimiru. Amen.
Seder Kriyat Torah, our service for the reading of Torah, page 245. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the strangers in your cities, to hear, to learn, to revere Adonai your God, to observe faithfully the words of this Torah, and let their children who do not yet know it hear, that they too may learn to revere Adonai your God. We rise in honor of our Torah.
Ein kemochava Elohim Adonai v'yei k'maasecha Malchutcha malchut kol olamim Umemshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitin Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom.
On page 247 at the bottom, we read responsively. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo Gadlul Adonai iti Uneromema Shemo Yachtav V'cha Adonai Hagedula V'hagivura V'hatiferet V'hanetzach V'haod Ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz Ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz L'cha Adonai הממלכה ואני אתמעשה לכל ראש. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד.
You may be seated. Thanks, Bernadette. I didn't realize it fell off. Okay. Well, all right. So if you did not get the text sheet when you came in, go ahead and grab one. It's easier than me trying to run around and grab one. Sorry, I forgot to leave one up here for you. Aaron will grab. Thank you, Aaron. So we are in the Torah portion of Miketz, which means we are still in the middle of the Joseph saga, of which takes 3 Torah portions. He kind of has the biggest chunk of Torah, the narrative that is about one of the characters in Bible. And so what's happening in this one, and we're kind of in the middle, he is already in jail. He is having a hard time and starts to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. And then things turn around for him, right? He interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh kind of Pharaoh promotes him. He becomes the second-hand man, and he is there. He has a large role. And then we kind of shift, and his brothers come to him asking for help, not knowing it's him. At the end of the Torah portion, we see after their second visit to see him, Joseph kind of tests them to see if they have become better people and puts the cup into Benjamin's bag to see if he'll, get it. If you've seen the musical, you know the whole story, right? Don't you love that that's the context for this story? So instead of running around with a microphone, I am going to just focus on the text ourselves. So the verses I chose here show us the promotion of Joseph, but what I really want to focus on is the clothing. And why is clothing so important when we talk about Joseph? So Genesis 41, chapter 41, verses 41 to 44. Pharaoh further said to Joseph, "See, I put you in charge of all the land of Egypt." And removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand. And he had him dressed in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried before him, "Abrek." Thus he placed him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, yet without you, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." I call that a pretty good promotion, right? So then underneath, I highlight the places where we end up talking about Joseph's clothing besides what we just looked at, right? So in Genesis 37:3, which is from the past Torah portion, now Israel loved Joseph best of all his sons, for he was the child of his old age, and he had made him an ornamented tunic. Right? The coat of many colors, that's how we all think of it now, or Technicolor Dreamcoat if we go back to the musical, right? But we always think about this coat and how important it is. So he first gets the coat. Couple verses later, when Joseph came up to his brothers, they ripped Joseph, stripped it of his tunic, the ornamented tunic he was wearing. So it plays a huge role. He gets it, it shows the favoritism. They're jealous, they get upset, they rip it up. It's later, a couple verses later, used to be dripped in blood to show Jacob that he must be dead, he lost it, and it's full of blood, okay? Then Genesis 39:12, we have his interaction with Potiphar's wife, which is not a really great one, but she caught hold of him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and got away and fled outside. Okay, makes sense, he's running away, she's ripping at his clothes, he just leaves it and runs. Right? He doesn't want to get in trouble, which he does anyway. But there's still this whole focus on the clothing. 41:14, right before the verses we just read. Thereupon Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was rushed from the dungeon to help interpret dreams. He had his hair cut and changed his clothes, and he appeared before Pharaoh, right? He was in jail for a while, so they wanted to make him a little bit more presentable before he went in front of Pharaoh. So we again see the clothing. Not just he got a haircut, he shaved, maybe had a shower, that'd be nice, right? But that he actually gets all new clothing and clean clothing. Then Genesis 41:42, which we just read, and removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand, and he had him dressed in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. We have all these references to his clothing and how important this is for Joseph. We see things about clothing with other characters, but none as much as Joseph. So Miketz is typically the Torah portion that falls on Shabbat Hanukkah, Shabbat in the middle of Hanukkah. Why, right? So we have here an explanation by Rabbi Amy Shinerman, and she says, Parashat Miketz is almost always read during Hanukkah and has come to be associated with themes of the victory of the weak over the powerful. In fact, Miketz turns the notion of who is powerful and who is weak on its head. Yosef, young and enslaved, possesses keen insight, self-control, and vision. In the long run, these are more powerful attributes, sorry for the typo, than the throne of Egypt, and Pharaoh cannot survive without Yosef. We often mistake brute strength and propensity to coerce and control for genuine strength and meaningful power. Ben Zoma taught in Pirkei Avot 4:1, "Who is mighty? Those who conquer their evil impulse. As it is written in Proverbs, one who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and one who rules over his spirit than one who conquers a city." An apt description of Yosef. right? So he is this powerful person. He's grown, he's developed, right? He was a little bit of this cocky, self-assured young boy telling his brothers, I had these dreams that I'm going to be better than you. And now we see him developing, and we talked about it a lot in Torah study this morning, about his development and his maturity. And we see this happening, but now he has this strength, this power in a very different way. And not just because he gets the signet ring and becomes the second in command, but his ability to interpret the dreams and his ability to understand what's going on. So let's go back to the clothes. What does this have to do with Hanukkah, or with anything for that matter? And how do we understand Joseph in terms of the clothing? So this is the Rabbi Jurgen commentary at the bottom here. In terms of Joseph's clothing, we see how he transforms over time. From last week's portion, we saw Joseph receive his tunic from his father and the meaning behind it, to being destroyed by his brother and dipped in blood, and then to his garments coming off of him when he is trying to flee Potiphar's wife. These are all the verses we just read. This week's portion, we see Joseph again robed in something special, given to him by someone of a high role and who wants to recognize his uniqueness. We see Joseph's life go through trial and tribulation, successes and sadnesses. To me, I see this as a cycle of growth and self-acknowledgement that Joseph goes through, which is exemplified by a changing of garments. He begins by being given a garment that shows how much his father loves him and wants him to be connected with their ancestors, something his brothers did not receive. Then that coat is ripped away from him and his comfort is removed in a brutal way full of lies and jealousy. Then in Egypt, Joseph is entrapped by Potiphar's wife, and in his escape, his clothes are ripped from him again, clothing that symbolized his safety and security in a new location. This scene is the one that sends him to jail without having a trial or his story being heard. Joseph is then summoned from jail to interpret Pharaoh's dreams and changes clothes to be presentable to Pharaoh. He is starting to gain strength and courage again, to show his worth to those around him. Once Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, Joseph is given fancy clothes, which are a symbol of his new position. Even more than that, he shows how he was able to prove himself and gain confidence in himself again. For me, I truly feel that the clothes symbolize the man within, a man who has grown to learn about himself and others, one who has been through it all, and one who has learned from his past to make something of himself. The connection then with Hanukkah is that when we think we have no chance, we have to remain who we are, and that will bring about an incredible change. The impetus for Hanukkah is a story of survival and Jews thriving following destruction and degradation. Joseph survives and thrives too, and we see this reflected in his clothing. So as we continue Hanukkah, I know we're on the 7th night tonight, so not a whole lot of nights left, but as we continue Hanukkah, the takeaway for me, and that I like to highlight with little kids, is that it's about being proud of who we are and what's on the inside, what's on the outside, and showing that pride to everyone, being that light unto the nations and spreading that pride to everyone around. Shabbat Shalom. So I am going to read these verses. Give me 1 second here. So the blessings are on page 250. And I chose verses that are in the middle of a column with no clear marking, so give me a second. I thought about changing it, but my text study was already good to go. Okay. It was a joke. You can laugh. It's Shabbat. We're enjoying each other's company. Should be relaxed. Everyone take a breath. Okay. So our blessings are on page 250, as I said, and we join together. Baruch hu het Adonai hamborach, Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Vayomer Paro el Yosef, re'eh natati itcha otcha el al kol eretz Mitzrayim. Vayasar paro et taba'ato me'al yado, v'yitain ota al yad Yosef, v'yilbesh oto bigdei shesh, v'yasem ribad hazahav al savaro. V'yirachev oto b'mirchevet hamishne asher lo, v'yikra'u lifanav avarech, v'notain oto al kol eretz Mitzrayim. Vayomer Paro el Yosef ani Paro bevil adecha lo yirim ish et yado ve'et raglo bechol eretz Mitzrayim. Vayikra Paro sham Yosef tzifanot pa'anecha vayitain lo et asanat bat pote para kohen. Together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. So we take this moment now to gain this strength and the pride of who we are inside and outside, even if we are in need of healing or those around us are in need of healing of mind, body, and spirit. We take these words of strength and we think about those who are in that need of healing, and we whisper their names aloud. We join together in the words of Misha Berach, which can be found on page 253.
Misha Berach Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Misha Berach Imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Bless us with the vision for tomorrow. Help us to reach out to those in pain. May the warmth of friendship ease our sorrow. Give us courage, give us faith, show us the way. Mi sheberach avotenu, mi sheberach imotenu. Hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
Don't turn the page. 252, we rise in honor of our Torah.
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe.
So before you go grab that, will you help me turn this?
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael.
I need you to help me with this first. So I grab the top and help me tighten. It's okay, I just can't do it myself.
Yala
Oh,
lai
okay.
lai
All right, go
lai
ahead and put the bell
lai.
down.
Yala lai 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 lai. Yala lai 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 lai. Yala lai lai. Yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai. Yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai.
Thank you. Page 256.
עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה, ותוכחה מאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש חדש עמנו, חדש עמנו כקדם.
We remain standing for Aleinu on page 283.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. As we turn to page 291 for our memorial meditation, we note with sadness the death of Jean H. Lipset, mother of Dr. Henry, Hank, and Ann Lipset. Grandchildren are Dr. Adam Lipset and Dr. Amanda Lipset. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were, in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life, now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. Our thoughts turn now to those in our community and extended community who have died at this time in years past. As we mark their yard sites, we remember them. Gladys Adelman, J. L. Adelman, Rose Alstafo, Harry Berger, Nathan Bolin, Milton Braun, Alexander A. Brown, MD, Julian Cavazos, Elliot Cohen, Binem Kukier, Adrian Dubinsky, Max Engel, Fanny Epstein, Walter F. Fine, Fela Jakobowitz Fenstermacher, Louis Friedberg, Victor Garafa, Barry Gershenhorn, Evelyn Gerstein, Sherry R. Goldstone, Gwen Cohen Goodstein, Sanford Greenberg, Rose H. Harrison, Josh Kahn, Nathan Callison, Abraham Kish, Rose Pomerantz Klein, Suzanne Netter Lakritz, Elise Vitterbo Lieberman, John Mayo McCune, Jacob Michelson, Stephen Millette, Lenore Moss, Alan Nassitz, Howard Nevelo, Benedito Oliveira, Edith P. Pearl, Miriam Pepper, Stephen Pepper, Eleanor Portnoy, Pedro Rojas Jr., Ruth Rosenberg, Saul Rubin, Harry Shames, Barbara Schneider, Bernhard Schneider, Sam Schwartz, Trudy Seelig, Carrie Arbeter Meir Shapiro, Michelle Singer, Fred Fritz Smith, Charles Spurt, Rose Statman, Morris Stern, Henry Hank Strickland Jr., Susan Train, Milton Saul Washer, Walter Wender, and Meyer Wolf. To these names, we add one who has died and been buried this past month, whose family is in a mourning period of Shloshim. We remember Kenneth, Kenny, Barry, Rose. We also think of two who have been buried this past week, whose families are in a mourning period of Shiva. We remember Dr. Martin Gerald Marty Rosenthal, cousin of Candy and M. Bernard Jr. Gardner. We also remember Joan Fries, mother of Jack and Jody Fries, Leslie Reich, and Terry Cohen. Her brother is Fred Wartell, and many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. To all of these names, we add those which are in our hearts each and every day as we remember them together by saying Kaddish Yatom on page 294. We rise together as one community. Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach te v'yamlich malchute, b'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayed chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'yizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'mei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitzpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu, La'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'elma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, u'ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to Israel and to all of us, to which we say, Amen. As we turn to page 324 for our closing song, festively, Ma'ot Sur, I want to thank again Jack for leading with me this morning. Always a pleasure. And I want to remind you, we have a musician in residence this weekend, Shira Klein, and she is doing an adult Havdalah tonight. It's here at Temple Beth-El in the Jacobson Garden. I think it's 7:30. One of 7. Okay, Samantha says 7. We'll go with that. 7. If you haven't RSVP'd, just shoot an email so we can get that RSVP. All the information is online, but we would love to have you. She is phenomenal. If you were here or watched services last night, she's amazing. So page 324, Ma'ot Sur.
Ma'ot Sur Yeshuati L'chana El Shabeach
365.
Tikon Betefilati B'sham Toda Nezabeach Le'etachinat Beach Mitzor Zegmor b'shir mizmor, Chanukat HaMizbeach. Rock of ages, let our song praise your saving power. You amid the raging foes were our sheltering tower. Furious they assailed us, but your arm availed us, and your word broke their sword when our own strength failed us, and your word broke their sword when our own strength failed us.
Shabbat Shalom and Happy Hanukkah.
Shabbat Shalom.